development of Jerusalem in the modern times, especially in the second half of the 19th century, which is what period in the history of the Holy Land?
Ottomans.
We're in the Ottoman period.
Ottoman.
Okay, so we're going to see some buildings, some developments which are later, of course, on our way, and I'm going to mention them. And I understand that you have here an expert about the urban development of Jerusalem in those periods. Noah told me that wrote to me that she's going to join us around 10. So I invited her, of course, to join me here and everything. Maybe I will also learn some new things together with you. And of course, I'm inviting everybody to, if you want to add anything, you want to correct me, you want to correct my English, you want to ask anything, please do. That's why I'm here. And maybe if I won't remember something, I will look for it, and we can arrange if there are questions, and I promise to give you more, because again, I apologize that my memory is not that strong. I'm only almost 57 years old, born here in Jerusalem when it was still divided, when this was Israel and the other side was Jordan. The focus of the tour is the development of Jerusalem, but more from the Jewish point of view. And that's why we start the day here, because we are now in two neighborhoods actually. Okay, Mishkenot Sha'ananim, which is the first Jewish neighborhood that was founded outside of the walls of Jerusalem, and also Yamin Mosheh, okay, which was founded a bit later. The two neighborhoods are all related to a very, very important guy, a Jew, a wealthy Jew,
Mosheh
Sir Moses
Montefiore.
Montefiore, from England, but the origin of his family was Italy. Okay? In Hebrew we call him Asar Mosheh Montefiore, like a minister, but he was never minister in the English government, but he was a Sir, Sar, so it goes well. Okay, so basically what we're going to do, we're going to walk from here and follow the development of Jerusalem in about a period of time of 30 years. Okay? Mishkenot Sha'ananim, anybody remembers when it was founded? 1860.
Yeah.
Okay, so from the Jewish point of view, that is the first neighborhood outside of the walls of the old city, right in front of us. Okay, just to locate ourselves, I understood from Joe that you already been in this neighborhood. You visited Ketef Hinnom.
Yes.
So you probably saw also the Scottish Church, St. Andrew Church, right? So we are facing the southwestern corner of the old city, just in front what we call today Mount Zion, basically the western hill of Jerusalem, right? The ancient Jerusalem, the historical Jerusalem, is actually located on those two hills, the eastern hill, which is not visible from here, and the western hill. And between us here, down there below, is the Ben Hinnom Valley, or the Hinnom Valley in English, Gay Ben Hinnom, from which comes the Hebrew term Gehenom, which in Arabic also is Jehannam, right? Hell. No,
Gehenom,
it's not the
Kidron.
Kidron is in the other side. Talking about hell, the Arabic name of the Kidron Valley is
Ketef Hinnom, Jahannam.
no, Wadi An-Nar. Wadi An-Nar, right? The Kidron, which is another interesting tradition about hell.
It leads to.
In the day of the Lord, according to the Muslim tradition, there's going to be a narrow bridge going above the Kidron Valley, Wadi An-Nar, and only the righteous are going to pass to the other side, to the Temple Mount, to Haram al-Sharif, to be judged in front of God. But the sinners are going to fall down into a stream of fire. Wadi An-Nar, okay, the valley or the stream of fire. So we have two hells in Jerusalem, not one. It's important to say it because Gay Ben Hinnom, which the upper part of it is what we call the Sultan's Pool, right?
Yes.
Talking about the Ottoman period, a water reservoir which was made by the same builder of the walls of the old city today, which is Suleiman the Magnificent. Right. Okay, the walls were built when? To memorize your
The 16th century.
16th
16th
century,
century.
1538 until 1542. It took them about 4 years to construct the walls, which were destroyed from when? How many years they were in ruins, the fortifications of Jerusalem?
300 years.
About 300 years.
مظبوط.
Okay, in the early 13th century, one of the Ayyubites, sultans,
Yes.
no, not Ba'amrullah,
Mu'azzam.
عايز المعظم.
he decided to rebuild the fortifications, but because of the fear that the Crusaders might return and use them against him or against the Muslims, after less than 10 years he decided to demolish them. So basically Suleiman the Magnificent is following the medieval fortifications of Jerusalem, just to remember where we are in time. So what we can see in front of us, the western wall of the old city of Jerusalem. Basically what we see is the Ottoman wall, but especially in this side, when you walk along, I don't know if you had the chance to do it in one of the tours, when you walk along a beautiful promenade outside of the old city, mainly the Armenian quarter, you can see very well how the latest fortification is based on early ones. You can even see there the Second Temple period fortification, which is what Josephus is calling what?
Hezekiah or what's no
First
the
wall.
Hasmonean.
That's the first wall. We are now in Hanukkah. Very
Hasmonean,
well.
Hasmonean.
The Hashmonean wall. Very
Hasmonean,
good.
yes. Second temple period.
It was rebuilt over
Over
Hezekiah.
over Hezekiah, yes, it was
Good,
portion of
but
it.
you cannot see that it here.
Oh, that's it. So
Only from the
Okay,
broad
you
wall.
you can see probably parts of the Hezekiah wall, maybe.
Broad wall, next to the
Maybe-
corridor.
Yeah, no, the broad. But here, inside, when they did the excavations in the but when they did the excavations in the citadel, in the Tower of David Museum, and also maybe in the Kishla, the excavation done by Amit Re'em from the IAA, maybe remains also of the wall from the first temple period were found. But you're absolutely right that the first wall, the Hashmonean wall, is following
The
first
Hezekiah.
temple wall, which the remains of it can be seen, as you said, in the Jewish quarter.
Yes.
The broad wall and also the parts in the corridor. Exactly. Very good. One important thing to remember as we're doing this rehearsal for the exam is we have to remember that this corner here never existed in the early fortification of Jerusalem. Because already from the first temple period, as you say, probably from the time of Hezekiah, late 8th century, and the first wall built by the Hashmoneans later, and also the Byzantine wall, which was built when?
The Byzantine
5th century. Eudokia, okay?
Avdokia.
Eudokia, right?
Right.
They were all continuing following the slope of the Western Hill, very logical. Right? Only in the 11th century, following a major earthquake in 1033, the Muslim authorities, we are now in the Fatimid period, okay, the late part of the early Muslim period, before the Crusader came. The situation here in Jerusalem was terrible, maybe very similar to the situation in the late 19th century. What made people decide to leave the old city? So the decision was, after this earthquake in 1033, to abandon this part, meaning the southern part of Mount Zion, or the Western Hill, and to establish a new fortification line, which was from that moment until today, the southern defense. Okay? Everybody who rebuilt those fortifications followed this line, including Suleiman the Magnificent. But remember that this part, what we call today Mount Zion, where the Dormition Abbey is, and the Tomb of David, and all the sites, very, very important, including the cemeteries, the Christian cemeteries, they were all included all this territory was included in the fortified city of Jerusalem. Sorry? The Western Hill. Western Hill, in the Byzantine period, it's named Mount Zion. Today we call only this part outside of the walls Mount Zion. Okay, but
Yeah.
so just to remember where we are in time. Why did I mention all the lines of fortification? To remember one important thing, that the Hinnom Valley, or the Gay Ben Hinnom, the Ben Hinnom Valley, is from the historical periods, is actually the boundary, the physical boundary between the fortified city and outside the city.
Mm.
And it has to do why at a certain moment in the 1856, if I remember, Sir Mosheh Montefiore, this wealthy Jew, that he was wealthy, but he also was married to Judith, his wife, who was a far cousin of another wealthy Jew, this time from New Orleans, whose name was Yehuda, like my name, Tura. But I was not wealthy like he was. So he gave Mosheh Montefiore something which was about $50,000 at that time when we are in the 19th
Treasure.
century. That's a lot of money.
50 million.
And that helped him to follow his decision to actually to build the first,
Neighborhoods.
let's say, the
Outside
beginning,
the
the
wall.
idea was not to build a neighborhood, but a hospital. The intention of Mosheh Montefiore were to build here a hospital, but when he saw that there was no need to build a hospital, there were enough hospitals, he came to the idea to build a neighborhood. Very small neighborhood, which he named Mishkenot Sha'ananim. The term Mishkenot Sha'ananim is coming, look, my memory still functions at this time of the day. Isaiah chapter 32, verse 18. You can check me out. And you're going to see that the two terms, okay, if somebody has the Hebrew Bible, he can open it and see that the two words, Mishkenot, dwellings, and Sha'ananim, appear in this verse, including also the word Miftachim, I think. So the Hebrew word Sha'anan is parallel to Boteach, somebody who lives in security. And the idea of security was very crucial here. Because although inside the old city, the conditions were actually terrible, densely populated, the hygiene was not so good, so also diseases, not to mention plagues. In 1866 there was even a major plague in Jerusalem. 1866.
1860s, yes, 60s.
So the conditions there, and also the cost of the housing. Many people did not own apartments or homes. They actually hired them from wealthy people who could afford more than one apartment. So really the situation was terrible, and yet people
They don't want to leave.
refused to leave.
Yeah, they don't want to leave.
They didn't want to leave. The idea that you are living surrounded by those walls, which existed already for 300 years, psychologically,
Fully secured.
because it's very hard to understand it. And
Oh.
I can tell you from my experience as a tour guide, more than 10 years already, I hardly come here to guide, because I usually guide, and I believe that most of you are going to guide tourists coming from abroad,
Pilgrims.
pilgrims and other Jewish also. Usually, when we are in Jerusalem, we are in the old city. And most of the guidings that I do in Jerusalem, I start them in the Jaffa Square, Jaffa Gate Square. And I talk to them and I say, look, this Jerusalem that you're going to visit inside, this was Jerusalem until 160 years ago. It's very hard to believe that what you see all around you here,
It's only 150 years.
the largest city in Israel today, we're going to reach the 1 million population, right? So in Israel, every 1 of 10 people live in Jerusalem
100,000.
today. it's very hard to understand that everything that you see around here is very, very new in the very ancient history of Jerusalem. And you can see this location from the square right there. You can see the windmill, you can see the red roofs of Yamin Mosheh. So from here, when we talk about the history of modern Jerusalem, it begins here. Well, from the Jewish point of view, we have to remember that not only the Jews eventually went out of the walls. By the way, a question: what was the major population inside the walls in the 19th century? According to Ottoman data. Any idea?
15, 20, 13,000.
No, but what was from all the religions and cultures?
Arab,
which was the
Muslim,
largest?
Muslim.
You say Armenian?
Muslims.
Muslim,
You say the
Christian.
Muslim?
Jewish.
The Jews. The Jews were the majority inside the walls of Jerusalem. And not the Jews are saying it, the Ottoman documents are saying it. And it's not a surprise, guys. It's not a surprise. Because we are now talking about before 1882. When we talk, I understood from Joe that you already talked about the Aliyot, right? The
Yes.
first Aliyah, 1882, 1883.
Yes.
So until then, when we talk about Jews in the Holy Land, the Hebrew term of it is yhouda yashan, right? The
Nachon.
old
Old
yishuv, old settlement. They were all concentrated
In Jerusalem.
in 4 settlements, what we call the sacred towns: Jerusalem,
Tiberia.
Tiberia, okay, Tzfat if you want, and Hebron.
Hebron.
That was it. Because we're talking basically about religious communities. Today you would call them ultra-Orthodox. And Jerusalem was the center, the holy city of Jerusalem. So the majority were Jews. But not only Jews, of course, were living, as you said, Armenians, Muslims, other Christian communities. And the need to leave the walls, although very, very terrifying at the beginning, because you had to actually overcome a psychological boundary to leave the walls, was a need that was done also by the Arab and Muslim communities. So when we talk about the first Arab or Muslim neighborhoods outside of the walls, where they were built and founded,
The Arab is the other side, the eastern part.
not exactly the other side, the northern side.
Eastern, north.
North, right.
North and
North,
east.
first of all, north of the Damascus Gate.
Yes.
Right? But even close, very close, the neighborhoods, I forgot, there is a Zahra, but there is another neighborhood, I forgot its name, which is right
Al-Musrara.
near, no,
Salah.
in front of Musara, but
Salah.
on the other side of the railway line.
Nablus Road.
Right on the over the Nablus Road, that's exactly, okay? So that is the second, or the other wave of people leaving. So the Jews starting to go westwards, the Muslims, the Arabs are going north and east later on. And what is this, the third element?
The Christians goes to the north.
You
west.
say the Christians, but we have to speak about a more general
The
idea.
European.
We're talking about the European
European,
powers. Exactly, the European powers.
Russian and other.
Because when we talk about the first compounds that were built outside of the walls, they even
North,
precede
west.
Mishkenot Sha'ananim and the Muslim, the Russian compound. And also, if you know, in the Geula neighborhood, what used to be the Schneller camp, okay, a German compound. Also, both of them were built in the first. So I remember seeing a drawing of a map of Jerusalem. You see only the old city, and the only built spot outside of the wall
30s?
is the Russian compound.
Yeah.
30s? 1830s?
We're talking about
No,
talking
no.
about the
After
it's very
60,
close to
after
1860 also.
After the 60s.
But
yeah.
it was a bit preceding, for example, Mishkenot Sha'ananim.
And also St. Louis in Newgate outside. Also all
Yeah,
of this.
yeah. So we're talking about Germans, and we're talking about Russians.
French.
Then we have the Germans.
German. Russian.
St. Paulus, what is called the Schmidt school.
Yeah, sure.
We
Schmidt
have
German.
the right
Italian.
north of the old city near the New Gate. The
So-
French compound with the St. Louis Hospital
St.
and the
Louis.
Notre Dame.
Terra
We have
Santa.
the Italian.
Santa.
Terra Santa is a bit later. It's a bit later.
81.
But then we can see that every European power also want to raise their flag by building all those institutions. Many of them are based, first of all, on religious, but it's not only religious. It has to do with economics, it has to do with pilgrimage, which means economic and tourism. And that is actually the beginning of Jerusalem actually going out or entering into the modern age. Because we can say that until about 1840, Jerusalem is relatively still in the Middle Ages, which is quite surprising when you figure out what's going on in Europe and in America at the same time. So what we're going to do, we're going to start here. Basically talk about Mishkenot Sha'ananim. Then we're going to go to maybe the biggest landmark or the most visible landmark of Jerusalem becoming a modern city, which is
First station.
the first station, exactly, the railway. The first railway station, the Tachana Rishona. And then we're going to, which is of course not a Jewish but a general thing, although Jews were involved in it too, in the process. And from there we're going to continue with this development with another very important community that added a lot, very small, but added a lot to the development and the modernization of the Holy Land. And I'm talking about the German colony. Okay, so a group of Christians that are living here nearby. So this is going to be our third station of the tour. But don't worry, in between we're going to do a stop in the first station.
it's a lot.
And you'll have a chance to have coffee. Okay, I will buy a bottle of water because I forgot to bring my water.
We can share.
From there we're going to start our way heading basically westwards,
King George.
okay, along the Jaffa Road. And we're going to visit on the way the two other first Jewish neighborhoods.
Nakhlaot.
No, before Nachlaot. Nachlaot is going to be our last. We're going to Machane Israel, and then we're going to Nachlat Shiva. After Nachlat Shiva, you're going to have your lunch break. Okay?
We have a place.
On the Jaffa Road, we have a variety of places.